for fantasy. Football franchise, talking about that guy. Hoogie, Tyler every week. Heavy analytics, competition real steep. Whoa, that's sweet. Oh, in this belief. Nick so sick, man, bringing ships the whole fleet. Goats, not sheep. Follow every tweet. Don't sleep, always finding sleepers on the street, boy. F3, winning every single league. Money back guaranteed, but it's free. Welcome to the franchise. Welcome to the franchise. Let's go.
All right, welcome back to the F3 pod. My name is Sean. I'm here with my co-host Joey.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at JoeyTheToothIDP.
And Andrew.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at BiddyCentFF. I'm pretty sure.
That's still hard for you.
Still hard. It's all right. Nobody follows you anyway. So
True.
So this is going to be our last time as the F3 pod. We are rebranding it to Dynasty Football Digest to go along with our website. So yeah, it's nothing's going to change except for the name and the
Just
brand.
the name.
But we're doing the same thing here, but you'll be finding our Twitter following there as well. So
Wait,
yeah,
so you guys aren't
to,
looking for somebody to replace me?
I mean, we're always looking for someone to replace you. It's just that, like, nobody wants to be on here.
They
We
said,
just can't get anybody.
no. I mean, you have to deal with us, and then they're like, do we have to be like him?
Yeah. No, requirements of the job, weird hats and child's toys that you're playing with while we're trying to talk here.
And drumsticks.
And drumsticks, yeah. So we're going to talk some receivers today, though. We got on the docket Laviska Shenault, Jefferson, KJ Hamler, Brandon Aiyuk, and Brian Edwards. You guys want to kick it off with Shenault?
Yeah, let's do it.
I
Yeah.
just don't like pronouncing it
You don't like pronouncing it?
that way.
How do you
Shenault?
prefer?
I feel like the L is silent. Shenault.
Hey, we're not doing that, though. All right, so Laviska Shenault. Was this your favorite of this group, or did you guys like somebody else more?
I like somebody else.
Okay.
He was the guy I thought was going to be my favorite, but I actually ended up not liking him nearly as much as I expected to.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I really liked this guy. So obviously, like, he's not a perfect prospect, and I think he's a notch below the guys that we talked about last week, but I think he's a notch above these other guys. So he was obviously a stellar athlete. Like, we can agree on that.
100%.
Like, dude,
He's a physical specimen.
He probably runs in the 4.3s. He's just built like he's built like Deebo Samuel, you know, just really physical, super fast, threat to take it vertical, really good after the catch. I thought his hands were pretty good. He let it into his frame a few times. He had a couple of drops, but like for the most part, his hands were pretty solid. Like, I don't think that's a negative part of his game. I don't think he's a super polished route runner. Like, he didn't look that way to me. He looked like he kind of just was living on his athleticism and explosiveness, but like, he's so good laterally after the catch that I just think that that's something that's going to develop for him. Like, he has all the tools to be an excellent separator with his route running. My biggest thing is that for how physically he is after the catch and at the catch point, I think he gets bodied a little bit in his routes. And I think, like, to me, that's a little less concerning just because, like, he clearly has the tools to fix that. So, like, we're looking at something that obviously is a hole in his profile, but, like, it's a fixable hole. And to me, like, almost all the things, I guess there's one thing that he struggles with that we'll get to in a second, that all of the things outside of that are things that I think are fixable and that his profile suggests should be fixed. And the other one of those would be that I don't think he's great in contested catch situations. I think that he tends to, and again, I think that has to do with his physicality in the routes. Like he just kind of gets bodied a little bit, and he shouldn't. The last thing that I would say is that he's not great at tracking the football down the field. Like he doesn't have to be necessarily, because he's so athletic that he can make up for his lack of recognition time. But like that's definitely something that you'd like to see to make him like the absolute premier deep threat. But Andrew, I could see you disagreeing with some of the things I was saying. So why don't you go ahead here?
Yeah, I mean, there's no debate about him being big and athletic. And like, so a lot of things that I disagreed with you kind of came back around to after, about how he was physical, but he's not impressive in contested situations at all. Like for a guy that's that big and strong, I thought he would do more. You already alluded to that. One thing I thought was that, particularly in his releases, I didn't think he had great technique. He releases just with his like his strength, right? With physicality, not with technique. I really didn't like his hands. Like I'm surprised that you were like, they're not great, but they're okay. I thought he was consistently body catching, and when he tried to hands catch, I thought that's when the drops were much more prevalent.
I guess I only saw 2 drops from the film I watched. I watched 4 games.
Okay, I definitely saw more than 2, and I watched 3 games. So I mean, just luck of the draw, the games that you watch, right?
Yeah.
I thought I didn't think he was like he said his roots were okay. I didn't think his roots were anything special. I didn't think that he was great at creating separation. I thought that where he excelled was specifically, he did a pretty good job of reading zone coverage and finding the soft spot in the zone. I do not think that he was getting open in man coverage. So I feel like if he is going to translate as that sort of alpha receiver in the NFL, he's going to see more man-to-man and less zone, and that's going to be a bit of a knock on him. I did think that he was reasonably elusive in the open field. He's not the kind of guy like they often say, like he could get away from you in a phone booth, right? He's not that guy that's like short area elusive, but he does a good job of sort of taking away angles on tacklers, right? And using his speed with a subtle move to make that big play downfield. And for how strong he was and how physical he was, I didn't think he had great body control. Like again, particularly in the contested catch situations, like he wasn't good at adjusting to a ball that might have been, a little bit off in the air. But
yeah, and I don't disagree with that, and that's where I knocked him for his tracking, and that's something that he probably isn't ever going to fix, and that would be like the primary hole for him, because like it is such a big part of being a vertical threat is tracking the football, and I don't know that that's something he's ever going to excel at. However, if the throw is anywhere other than underthrown, he has the athleticism to make up for his lack of tracking ability, because he can run under it. But on underthrown balls, you're right. Like he does not do a good job of coming back to catch the football, because he just kind of like, he isn't as physical as you'd like to see him, at least in those situations. But and it's weird, man, because he's so physical in other parts of the game. It's just very strange. But yeah, I think that what I'm looking at there is he's got to get better at running routes to be more of that underneath or playing the slot or anything like that. And he's got to get more physical to win more as a vertical threat. So like those are your 2 things, but those are really the 2 holes where you're looking at somebody that has all the tools to do either thing aside from those things. The drops don't really concern me, and I guess like I didn't see the struggles outside the frame that you saw, but that'll be something where I'll revisit the film and take a look for it. Joey, what do you got?
2 of the biggest things that you both hit on, I thought he was horrible at tracking the ball. I didn't think he was good at coming back to the ball at all, and contested catch situations. You'd think a man of his physical stature, he would be able to win those situations. But I felt like you said, he got bodied up too easily. I don't know, he just couldn't win. The other thing I saw was on his breaks, like when he, instead of like where he's supposed to cut off and break to the sideline, every one of his breaks is almost breaking vertically. Like he's not actually running his correct routes. They're all like every route is breaking vertically.
What do you mean? I guess.
So like say you're doing like an out route to the sideline, instead of just like doing like straight and then just cut straight to the sideline, he's always taking an angle vertical. It's never like an it's always got a poor angle on his route. Like there's no his brakes are bad. I figured, like you said, most of the things that he does poorly are teachable, and his physical traits are so tantalizing that he's the kind of guy that you want to get the ball in his hands. And I guess we kind of touched on another guy we're going to talk about tonight being somewhat similar, but I kind of feel like as of right now, because of his lack of polish, he's more of like a Cordell Patterson, better than Cordell Patterson, don't get me wrong. But kind of the same deal. Like he's a big physical receiver that you just want to get the ball in his hands and try to make him make plays.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson was never really all that productive either, though.
No.
Where Visca has been like extremely productive over his career. So
he was productive his second year. He wasn't productive year one, and he was moderately productive year 3.
I guess I'd have to pull that up again. But
I think he only had like 600 or 700 yards this year, didn't he? Is that viewed as productive?
I guess I got to pull up the numbers, but
he went over $1,000 last year.
And he also has very good run blocking. Sorry.
I came in really expecting to like him, and kind of my I guess what I was expecting to see was a bigger Jalen Reagor, and I like Reagor a lot more. And I mean, I'm not saying that I shouldn't. I think most people do. I don't think there's much competition there, but I don't even think it's close. Like I think that Reagor is just a whole different tier.
I agree. I don't disagree with that. And I think all the guys that we talked about last week are a different tier from Visca, but I also think that I like him a little bit more than the other guys we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
But when do you guys have strong feelings on KJ Hamler?
I loved watching him run his routes. He's so little. He's so small. Was he 165 pounds?
I think he's like 175, but yeah, and he's 5'9".
Yeah. But I mean, I loved his route running. He was crisp. His brakes were great. He's got good change of speed, and he's got great burst. He's elusive when he gets the ball in his hands. I feel like he's got good footwork in his routes. He beats man coverage very easily, mainly because of his speed and his footwork. The only thing is he's a guy who gets beat very easily in press coverage. If a cornerback gets their hands on him, he's done. He doesn't high point well. Contested catch, obviously, probably because of his size. And he catches it with his body a little too much. But, I mean, he's another guy. He's like a poor man's Jalen Reagor, I feel like. He's kind of this.
To me, he kind of reminds me of Jamison Crowder a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a good comparison.
And I think that's like fantasy-wise, I think that's like what you're hoping for out of him, which is, like back end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. You're not going to run the offense through him, but like, I mean, I guess they kind of did run the offense through Crowder a little bit this year, but yeah, he's a really good athlete. His routes are fantastic. Rack ability, excellent. Tracking, excellent. It's the size, and it's like on top of that, the fact that he compounds the problem by letting the ball into his frame and just like
it becomes even smaller. Yeah,
just minimizing an already small catch radius. So I think, and like, yeah, the size plays into a lot of it, where it's not that he's like shies from contact, but he just isn't big enough to deal with it, you know, and it's gonna hurt him in press. It's gonna hurt him in contested catch situations. It's gonna hurt him. Like, I think he's a good enough athlete that he's gonna win deep sometimes, but like if he doesn't burn them, like he's not going to win those reps, and that's a problem. So I think what you're looking at is probably someone that's going to be a lot more effective in the short to intermediate plays, but also that's kind of where you're going to see more of your contested catches. So it's a little bit of a frustrating hole in his profile, but I think that like he could be Jamison Crowder. Like I think that's where he could end up, and I wouldn't hate it if that's where he went.
Right.
Does Crowder have deep speed?
I don't know what Crowder ran. I don't know why you keep asking me questions I'm clearly unprepared to answer, but
well,
let me.
I just like that's where I saw Hamler really winning. Like the trait to me that stuck out the most was his deep ball tracking. He just was really, really effective in making like late adjustments in his routes, tracking the ball, and obviously his speed allowed him to get open to the point where he could make those adjustments and still make the catch. And so that's why I kind of like the Crowder comparison. I was personally thinking more Emmanuel Sanders. I did a quick search, and Sanders is a little bit bigger. He's 5'11", 186, so he's a little bigger. I think Marquise Brown is a better size comparison. He was 5'9", 165, so
yeah,
he's
that's
similar height.
Kind of what I was thinking of.
A little lighter. I don't think he's got Brown's speed. I don't think he's gonna run quite that fast, but no, that's I mean, he's an intriguing prospect, but like as you alluded to, like as being more of like a secondary, tertiary option, I don't know that he holds a lot of fantasy value for me anyway.
Right.
So Crowder ran a 4.56, so he was not particularly fast at all.
No.
But I mean, like if Hamler ends up as like a low end wide receiver 2 or a high end wide receiver 3, even like a mid wide receiver 3, like that's value, especially
worth drafting.
Especially if you're drafting that in like middle of the second to middle of the third, somewhere in there, like which is kind of where I think he's going to end up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't hate that range for him, but he's not in the same tier as the guys we've talked about, in my opinion. You take Shenault over Hamler?
I do, just on like potential.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to talk Bryan Edwards and Justin Jefferson. All right, let's talk Bryan Edwards. One of you guys have strong feelings on Bryan Edwards? Both of you. All right, let's hear it, Andrew.
I like him a lot. I came into this whole process with a little bit of preconceptions, and I was kind of alluding to that when we talked earlier about how I really thought I was going to like Shenault, and I didn't love him.
Stop.
Shenault.
You freaking Canadian.
Stop. God, you're being a Joey.
But I
win today.
I didn't expect to love Edwards, and I loved him. My perception coming in was that he was kind of like kind of just
Michael Crabtree.
boring, right? He's just kind of like he's a relatively big guy. He runs decent routes. He's not very exciting. I thought he was actually quicker than I expected. He's certainly not fast. I won't say he was fast, but I thought he was very quick in and out of his breaks. He was able to create separation.
Be very careful talking about his speed. Did you see him on Twitter the other day?
No.
He came out on Twitter and just said like, apparently draft Twitter thinks I'm slow, and then the shrugging emoji. It's like, oh man, he's reading everything that people are writing about him.
Oh
so
man.
just be careful.
That was like my biggest knock too.
I don't know mine.
Well, no, but so like, let's say he runs like the same as Crowder, like a 4 or 5, 6. I think that's a good speed for him. I don't think he's going faster than that, right? And I think that's fast enough, right? So he's fast enough, but he's not going to break away. But I did like his quickness. I thought he was like in and out of his breaks quickly. I thought he ran good routes, or as you guys say, routes. I thought he was very physical and very tough. Like he's always fighting for more yards. He reminded me a little bit of like a running back in that sense, where he was definitely not contact averse. I was really surprised. So again, I don't know that much about South Carolina football, how involved he was in the offense. I was expecting them to be much more of a run first program, but he was like heavily involved in that offense. He was a focal point. I thought he had good releases, both in terms of like his technique and his physicality. Like he's able to win with technique, but he's also he's a big, strong dude. He's able to overmuscle some DBs. I thought his hands were good. I don't think he created elite separation, but I thought he created enough separation.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also strong in contested catches when he didn't create separation. So that was kind of like a double plus for me. And the other thing I really liked was his body control. So I really didn't see outside of like long speed, and even then, like there's a couple times where I saw he did have long touchdowns where he was able to get some yards after catch. So like he has, again, enough speed. He's just not. It's not an elite trait.
So I guess I agree with a lot of what you said. I thought his routes were decent. I didn't think they were. I was expecting him to be better because he's been productive for 4 years now. So I was just kind of like in my head, I was just kind of picturing somebody who is just like a technician, and he's not like technician level, but he runs decent routes. I thought he was okay versus the press. He definitely has some room to improve there, and I think he can because he is a bigger guy, more physical. I think that he should improve there, but it's definitely not a strength of his right now. Like right now, I think that he probably is going to have to start out in the slot and then bump outside once he gets better at his releases. And then I did really like his ability after the catch. His hands are really good, but I think he lets it into his frame a little bit too much. Obviously, athleticism is just a little bit of a question. And then I didn't think he was that great at tracking the football. So for me, like the lack of long speed, the lack of tracking, and kind of despite his frame not really like utilizing his full catch radius, I think that kind of eliminates him as like a deep threat. And I think if you're not going to be a deep threat on the outside and your releases need work, I think he probably profiled better as like a big slot type of guy, similar to who we're going to talk about next. But I think that he kind of figures into like a Tyler Boyd or Tajay Sharp type of role at the next level. And I think that's kind of like the range of outcomes where like Tajay Sharp is the low end and Tyler Boyd is the high end.
The low end.
What?
That's a low end.
Yeah, it is. It really. But like you could see how I might think they're like similar prospects.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So like that he could fail in that way, but he also could succeed in the way that Tyler Boyd did.
Yeah. I like Edwards. I think he's you guys pretty much hit on everything. I think his route running, I think he's a little tight in the hips, but I think that's mainly because of his athletic profile. I don't think he's really that athletic. Sorry, guy. If you're listening, I really apologize.
His name is Brian.
What is it?
Brian.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Edwards. We're talking about Brian Edwards.
Oh, never mind. Hold on. Let me change this dick. I think he had great size, good power and determination, especially with the ball in his hands. He's always fighting for extra yards. But like you said, catches into his frame a little bit too much. But I do think when he does catch with his hands, he's got very strong hands, rarely drops it. But like I said, just his athletic profile, I think, limits his route running a little bit. And like you said, in the press, I think he gets beat in the press too much. I think he needs to work on his footwork at the line.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, if you're drafting Tyler Boyd, what pick are you willing to spend on that in a rookie draft?
I'd grab him in a early to mid second.
Okay.
I think Tyler Boyd is when Tyler Boyd was drafted, I think he was probably in that range. I think now, if you knew what he was going to do, I think he'd be like a mid to late first.
Would you trade the 106 for Tyler Boyd right now?
No.
Would you trade the 110 for Tyler Boyd?
Probably.
Okay, so we're looking somewhere in that 108 to 110 is where you'd be willing to draft Bryan Edwards. And my receiver model that I've been working on lately, like, absolutely loves Bryan Edwards. So
Which is fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Wait, you've been working on a receiver model?
Thank you, Joey. I appreciate that. Finally, someone's acknowledged my hard work that I've been putting in. But
it's some serious work too. Kind of mind blowing to me that you have all this time.
I mean, I have had a day off. I just used all of it. All right. So next guy we got is Justin Jefferson. Kind of a little bit of a similar profile in terms of like where I think what role he'll end up in the NFL. What did you guys think? I want to hear this.
It's very, very similar to Edwards. I think he's a little better. I mean, Edwards is more physical, but I think with the ball in his hands, I think Jefferson's a lot more elusive. I think he's got good footwork. I saw multiple times where he had defenders pretty much literally like either falling over or spinning around. I think he's got very strong hands. I think he was a better route runner than Edwards.
He was a much better route runner than Edwards.
And I think that has a lot to do with his footwork. But I thought he had good body control, same as Edwards. I think he's, like you said, more of a slot guy. He excels in those short intermediate routes. But other than that, I mean, I didn't see him able to beat press coverage like Edwards. Not the most athletic, but he wasn't afraid of contact. Very, very similar to Edwards, but I think he's much better a route runner.
Yeah, I think he's got some of the best hands of the guys we've talked about, to be honest.
Yeah, I think his catch rate this year was like 91% or something.
Was
like
it?
That. It was crazy.
It was on Twitter the other day. It was like 111 catches on like 130 targets.
It blew my mind. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, no, his hands are crazy. He has a really lean frame, which is trouble in a few ways for wide receivers. Usually it doesn't help you against the press, contested catch situations, injury risk. Those are three things with a smaller frame, and you definitely see the lack of physicality there. I think he does well in contested catch situations, but he's not as much of like a box him out type of guy. It's more just that his hands are that good. His route running was really good. I thought he attacked the ball really well too, where like he didn't let it get to him. He like aggressively attacked the football. Like you said, I think he's probably just an average athlete. But I think that he kind of makes up for that with his ability to separate with route running and his basically catch radius and effective catch radius. And on top of that, I think he tracks the football well. So what that kind of profiles out to me as is, again, like kind of that big slot receiver, because I don't think he has the long speed or the physicality to really threaten on the outside consistently and beat the press. So I think you're more likely to see him playing in the slot, and also I think that utilizes his route running a little bit better. And I think that to me is a little bit more of a sound, well-rounded profile in the big slot role than Bryan Edwards. However, like I think they both have a good profile for that role. I think Justin Jefferson is probably a little more likely to hit that Tyler Boyd mark than Bryan Edwards, in my opinion. Andrew?
So I did like Justin Jefferson. I didn't like him quite as much as Edwards. I agree with a lot of what you guys said. One thing that really, really jumped out at me was how active he was as a blocker. Like he did not shy away from contact whatsoever in the blocking game. Like he's a football player. He wanted to be involved in the play no matter what. So even though he may be a little bit slighter in frame, he's not afraid of contact. It's not necessarily the best thing for him, right. But he's willing to make that sacrifice.
Which, like, I appreciate the alpha mentality in wide receivers. Like,
right, absolutely.
I think it's important.
One thing I didn't see, which Joey alluded to, was the explosiveness after the catch. I felt like, you know, he might be able to turn it upfield for a first down if he caught it short of the sticks, but I didn't see him really creating explosive plays.
I don't think he was explosive. I think he was elusive.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really see it. You know, he might get away from the first downer in the sense that he could get him past him to get to the marker, but I didn't see him actually eluding him to the point where the next defender brought him down. I always saw the first guy bringing him down, but that's just what I saw.
You didn't see you didn't see him CD lambing anybody.
No, exactly. Yeah, I honestly I like Edwards a little bit more, and you know, you keep bringing up Tyler Boyd for Edwards, and obviously this is a little bit of hyperbole, but I don't see Boyd as a ceiling. I see Michael Thomas as a ceiling, which is obviously Michael Thomas is like record-setting wide receiver. That's a little bit of a hyperbole, but
How do you feel about Randy Moss's?
he's not have a Randy Moss ceiling. He does not have the long speed. But when I see the
only thing
or
separating.
Or the ball.
We're just trying to get back on his good side.
Or the ball tracking.
I also can't believe you just called him slow again. Brian Edwards is going to hate you.
When I see Justin Jefferson, I see more of honestly a little bit of Cooper Kupp in the fact that he's crisp roots, good hands. I don't think he's again an elite athlete, but I think he's fast enough. So that would be more my comparable for Jefferson. But
okay, yeah, I could see that. I think I can see that. So we're calling Brian Edwards, Randy Moss, and Justin Jefferson Cooper Kupp.
That's close, yeah. Close comparison.
Wait till we get to Jerry Rice.
Oh man, coming up next, Brandon Aiyuk. We got one last guy to talk about. I'm gonna let you guys kick it off because, like, I really liked this guy, but you guys seem to be in love with this guy. So, unlike how you guys feel about Brian Edwards' speed.
I love him.
Don't drag me into that.
I love him, but I'm gonna let Joey step in here.
All right, yeah. I really liked Aiyuk. I think he has excellent route running ability. He's got beautiful footwork, beats press very well. He's got good speed, short area speed, and he's got good long speed. He's got smooth hips, very fluid, great in the open field. You can watch him in kick returns too. He's amazing in the open field. From what I saw, I thought he had great hands. Like there was multiple times where I saw him pluck the ball into the sky. It reminded me of what I saw from Jacoby Myers last year when I was watching. Big fan there. Very shifty after the catch. Let's see. I think he tracks the ball pretty well. He's just not great in contested catch situations. That's my biggest knock on him is contested catch situations. He pretty much loses almost every time. But there's not many times he actually gets into those contested catch situations because he's usually winning with his route running.
All right, Andrew?
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I had that he looks both fast and quick. So whereas Edwards, I thought he looked quick but not fast. Aiyuk, I thought was both, and I think that's just a deadly combination to go along with what Joey said about his route running. He reminded me.
You said it right.
I had to think really hard about it. He reminded me, and this is probably again it's a little bit of hyperbole, but he reminded me of McLaurin in that he was an extremely technical route runner. However, he's also very, very fast. And those two things in combination make him very difficult to contain. I thought he had good hands. I thought he had very good and technical releases at the line. And his deep ball tracking, I think the only guy that might have been a little better, and I'm not even sure if he was better, was Hammier. Because Hamler's deep ball tracking really stood out to me, but Aiyuk did as well. So, you know, I think he's not physical. He's not a guy that's going to necessarily win a lot of contested catches, but you said it yourself. He's not likely to get into a lot of those situations because of his other traits. So I'm a fan.
So I'll start off by saying I definitely think he's better at tracking the ball than Hammier. So his positives, I've got, he's really good after the catch. He's a strong runner, an elusive runner. He's athletic. Like, he's definitely a threat with the ball in his hands. He tracks the ball well. He runs really good routes. And really good body control. I thought his hands were okay. I wasn't as impressed as you guys were. But I mean, they're fine. Like, there's no issue there. I think that part of that to me really comes down to the fact that he doesn't make contested catches, and I think that those are going to pop up more for him when he's facing better athletes. In terms of, like, I don't need him to be like a contested catch artist, but like, I'd like to see him make those sometimes, especially because I don't think that his releases are very good. I know you said that you liked him. I thought he was pretty poor at releasing at the line of scrimmage, which, if that's the case, you're probably going to start off playing in the slot. And if you're not making contested catches, you're going to struggle a little bit in the slot. So you have to get better at one or the other. And I think that he lets the ball into his frame a little bit too much. He doesn't attack the football as much as I'd like him to. And I think, again, like, that's part of contested catch issue. So I think all of those things kind of compound on it. But really, to me, like, he's kind of similar to Laviska Shenault in terms of the way I project them, because I think that they're both missing like a part of what they're looking for to be like a complete slot receiver or a complete outside receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think Laviska Shenault has a little more upside than Aiyuk.
See, I thought his releases at the line were good.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't see it at all. It didn't look great to me. But
really,
I mean, yeah, that's something I'll take note of to go back and watch. So
I was literally just watching a little bit more, like in the USC game. I saw, like, as we were talking right before we jumped on here, and I saw there was like 2 or 3 times he beat him at the line.
USC doesn't impress anybody. I'm just saying, but yeah, no, it's something for me to take note of, where like these are all things where when I see something differently than you guys, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna look for it and see whether you change my mind or whether I'm still stuck on it. So
yeah.
Andrew, you look like you have something to say.
I was just gonna say that I thought Brian Edwards looked really fast, and you need to go reevaluate his tape.
Yeah, I thought his speed really jumped out.
I will go back to that and check it out. So we're gonna real quick kind of tier the guys that we've talked about. I'll do mine real quick. So for me, I got Lamb and Judy in a tier by themselves. I think that there's an argument that Ruggs or Rager belong in that tier, or like the back end of that tier. And I know some people are arguing that they are, one of those guys is wide receiver 1, but to me, I still think it's Lamb and Judy. And then after that, we got Henry, Ruggs, and Rager in a tier by themselves. And then I have Viska on his own, because I think like that group of 5 to me is like my top 5 of all these guys that I've watched, and it's pretty clear there. So like, I don't like Viska as much as I like Ruggs or Rager, but like I like him significantly more than the rest of these guys. So then, the next tier I'd have is Aiyuk, Brian Edwards, and Jefferson, and then after that I've got T. Higgins and Hammier. And I think to me the reason, it's not that I dislike Higgins in comparison to the first 4 guys that we watched. I don't hate him, and I don't hate Hammier. I actually really like both of their skill sets. I just think they're kind of limited skill sets where they're going to both be in specific roles, where I think Higgins is going to be more of a possession or red zone receiver, and Hammier is going to be a more underneath receiver, and there just isn't a whole lot of room for versatility and growth there. So I kind of have them behind these other guys who have a little more potential to push their way into a more versatile wide receiver spot. Mm-hmm. Andrew, you want to do yours?
Yeah, sure. I'm sort of in agreement with you at the very top. I had Lamb and Judy in a tier by themselves, Rager and Ruggs. No argument there. After that, I kind of, I guess, went on a little bit different. I did have Hamler at the very bottom, but I had Higgins in a tier slightly above him. So rather than going a mixed up route, I'll say that my next tier after Rager and Ruggs was Aiyuk and Edwards. I like both those guys a lot. And then the next tier was Jefferson, Shenault, and Higgins all together. And so, I'm not a big fan of Higgins, but, I think he still does have some traits that translate to the NFL, like you alluded to. Like, it's not that I dislike him, it's that I'm not as high on him as the other guys. So the Jefferson, Shenault region are kind of where I have him. And then Hamler, I think the size limitations are just too much to put him up there with some of those other guys we talked about. If he had, just a little more size, he could be a completely different player, I think. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
That's where I'm at.
It's definitely the size concerns that keep him down there for me. It's just the way that he compounds the size concerns with body catching and not extending his frame and creating a catch radius and a bigger target for his quarterback. So yeah, no, I agree with that. Joey?
It's very similar. Lamb and Judy at the top, Ruggs and Rager. But then I have Shenault and Aiyuk. They're in one of them their own. And then I have Edwards and Jefferson, and then Higgins and Hamler.
So the only difference between yours and mine is that you moved Aiyuk into the LaVisca tier, and everything else is exactly the same.
Yep.
Coward.
I like Aiyuk, man. I'm sorry. And I like Aiyuk over Shenault.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Same here.
Well, I can tell you right now, then I will not be getting any Aiyuk shares this year, and that's pretty disappointing. But that's the way it goes.
Love goes.
I'll trade him to you for a
first round pick.
First next year.
Yeah, here we go. All right. So this has been the final episode of the F3 pod. We will be back next week, but we will be Dynasty Football Digest. You can find our written content at dynastyfootballdigest.com or at idpguys.org. You can subscribe to our website to get premium content. We have rankings, access to our Slack channel.
He's pouring one out for
Pour one out for F3.
Oh, he's over here pouring one out for F. Okay. All right. So yeah, rankings, Slack channel, tools. We've got the trade calculator. My wide receiver model that these guys hate so much for some reason.
I love it. I think it's beautiful.
They say they love it, but they won't even talk to me about it. I've been amped to talk about it, and I'm like sending it out there, and these guys are just like, yeah, okay.
Bro, I'm working when you're at home, like jacked up about this. You're like, all right, so who wants to talk to me? I'm like, hold on, I'm like working.
You were not working at 9 p.m. last night, sir.
I was sleeping at 9 p.m. last night.
I'm just confused. Like, when did you start taking photographs of wide receivers?
You're the worst. Anyway, the wide receiver model will be up there. I have a running back model as well. I've got a little more data that I want to work into that, but hopefully we can do that and then include that in the draft magazine that we're going to be putting out, where we're doing breakdowns of a ton of different prospects. Basically, anybody you need to know for your rookie drafts, we're going to have covered for you. So you can buy that on the website as well, and then basically we'll try and include some of these analytics I've been working on in that. So, well, RIP F3.
We love you, Dark Country.
Usher in the new era of Dynasty Football Digest.